because it's been a rough month. Let's be honest. October's not been the best month ever for BYU football. And one of the things that was interesting yesterday is we talked to a bunch of BYU alumni, and there is quite the bit of discontent amongst the alumni. And the question I think you have to ask, Jake, is do you believe that Kalani Sitake has lost the fan base in his football team?
Well, I think the fan base is it's tough to gauge that. I mean, I have no doubts that people think that, Tuiaki should be fired and there should be some major changes on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't even disagree with that. I can't say that if you said to me, hey, if Kalani came out tomorrow and said they're firing Tuiaki, I could get behind that logic. I understand where you're coming from on it. But as far as Kalani's concerned, I mean, I don't think that he's lost the fan base. He certainly hasn't lost me. I am expecting some changes to happen, but he hasn't lost me yet. And more importantly, as far as the football team is concerned, I don't think Kalani has lost the football team yet. I think that the players understand that Kalani is one guy. Obviously, he is the head coach, but what you need to understand is that in the football world, it's not like, and this is what we kind of talked to Harris about earlier in the week when Harris LaChance, BYU offensive lineman, comes on our show every Wednesday. We asked him this week, hey, what's the vibe with Kalani right now? And Harris straight up said, I don't get to see him and spend a ton of time with him, but I can tell you that he's frustrated. So my point here is that the players know that Kalani is not amused right now. The players know that Kalani takes, getting this team back on track very seriously. And so, no, I don't think that he's lost the players, but I think as long as you keep losing, as long as you keep having to go through the losing conversations that every sports team in any sport ends up having after you lose a game, that's not fun. So that's why I say, I think if they can get the defense back on track, I think you can kind of salvage this season. Because I don't think there's any saving it with the expectations you had coming in, but I think you can salvage it at least. And so to me, that's why I think if you're a player for BYU, you still believe in what Kalani's doing.
I think that's a very interesting point. Do you believe in what Kalani Sitake is doing? Now, you also mentioned Ilaisia Tuiaki's name. And I actually think this is where the rubber meets the road in the BYU locker room because, we told you earlier this week, we talked to a BYU football starter on defense who said that the defensive side of the line is pretty frustrated and used the word, I believe it was disillusioned with the game plan on a week-to-week basis. Yesterday, again, we were talking to a bunch of BYU heavy hitters, talking about how, in the second half of the Wyoming game, Kalani Sitake took over play calling on defense and they dominated. And it is disappointing to some people that Kalani won't take over play calling defensively full time. I don't know. I think this is a really critical tipping point, not only in this season, but in Kalani Sitake's stay as the head coach at BYU football. Best. Because if Ilaisia Tuiaki is allowed to keep his job after this season, I think it's going to damage the program. Right now, I think you don't fire a guy like Ilaisia Tuiaki in the middle of the season. You don't fire a guy for the sake of firing a guy. You don't fire a guy, in my opinion, to appease the locker room. I just don't think you do that. I think in the offseason, significant changes have to come to Kalani's staff. I just think this dysfunction, and we have talked for months now about the dysfunction in the athletic program and in the what's the right way to say this? The business side with the athletic side. There is a lot of dysfunction at BYU right now. And I think some of that now is starting to trickle down into the football program. And you wonder about buzzwords like accountability. Is Kalani Sitake being held to account for the performance of this defense? Because he absolutely should be, but it doesn't seem like he is. And I think that, Jake, is where we start talking about, is Kalani losing his football team? And I think on the defensive side of the ball, I actually think Kalani has lost some guys because he has not taken over play calling full time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the defense is tough because obviously with the way football works, all these guys, so you have to understand that every single guy out there during the week, when BYU, when we talk about preparing for a football game, defensive linemen, linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, They all have different rooms that they're in with their specific position coaches preparing for the game that they're going to play. And then all of those come together, right? All those guys are prepared for their specific job. You put all 11 of them on the football field, and they all do a job as a collective unit. The problem comes in, and the issue right now that BYU defensively is having is mainstays on that defense do not agree with playing dime against Notre Dame and playing dime against these teams like Arkansas that have guys like Raheem Sanders in the backfield running it down your throat against DBs. They don't agree with that philosophy. And so that causes division. When you're playing football and you don't believe in the scheme, that's going to cause division. That's going to cause guys to be like, hey, what are we doing? Why, like, I can only imagine there must be players who are like, why are we in this position? Why is this the call? Like, we see this all the time in sports. You know, who's taking the last shot? What pitch are we throwing? You know, who's playing goalie that night for the hockey team? You know, we see this all the time. But when you lose and you continue to lose, and again, I know it's only 2 games, right? Like, it's not like they've lost 5 in a row. It's only 2 games, but those 2 games happen to be the biggest 2 games of your season, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so with those being the biggest 2 games of your season, it feels like this big thing. It feels like this program-wide issue. And that's why I think your point about, you know, defensive guys in Kalani is, you know, spot on.
It feels like the world is ending.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. And when you're now a full touchdown favorite on the road against Liberty, you have expectations to meet. And if they go to Liberty, if they go to Lynchburg and they lose, I think you got to, and if it's the same story it was against Arkansas, because let's be honest about what happened with Arkansas. I don't think anybody has issues with the offense. Jaron looked very Jaron-like to me last week.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like, you know, obviously Christopher Brooks didn't have a great game, but you're trailing in the second half. You're not running the football. I think you look at Cody Epps. I think you look at Puka. I mean, you did a good job spreading the football around. The offense was fine. The defense was a complete and total failure. And so if you go to Liberty and that same thing's happening, who knows who's going to play? If quitter quarterback plays for them, you know, it's probably better for you.
Yeah.
But it's not like Liberty's going to roll over. I remind you, I go back to 2019 when you had a really tight contest with Liberty. You almost lost that game. So they're not going to roll over. And we played this video all week long about Hugh Freeze telling his Liberty Flames that this is the biggest game that they've ever had at home, and the hotels are sold out, the stadium's sold out, the streets are full, like talking about how BYU is the single biggest football game and that this is why he took the job and this is why you came to Liberty to play football, like all this stuff that Hugh Freeze is talking about.
Yeah.
The head coach at Liberty is Hugh Freeze, saying that these are the games that we came here to play. And you're a 7-point home dog to BYU. Can BYU cover that number? It's not going to be easy. This is a game you better pay attention to because I think this could be the beginning of the end for Kalani Sitake and Ilaisia Tuiaki. I'm telling you right now, if they lose this game, you have to start asking questions about Kalani Sitake's future. I don't see how you avoid it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're a 500 football team, and I don't care if you're bowl eligible, because let's also get something else straight. None of us came here this season for BYU football to win 6 games and go to Jimmy's Whack Capicola Bowl. Like, nobody cares about going to mid-level bowl. Nobody, mid-level, low-level, hey, we need a team, maybe that 500, you know, BYU team can get involved.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not who this program's been. If you don't win the rest of your games, I think you're in real trouble here. If you're going to lose to Liberties and Boise's of the world, you're in real trouble here. It doesn't matter if you're injured. Everybody's got injuries. You want to talk about the schedule in the bye week? Great. What are you going to say a year from now when you've got injuries because you're getting your ass handed to you in the Big 12 because Ilaisia Tuiaki is still dropping all 57 players that are on defense for BYU? That's the question that has to be asked.
Yeah.
You can't keep doing, you know, like the popular buzz term these days is, you know, the hockey line change on defense last week. You can't keep swapping 11 for 11. This is not Pop Warner football. Mom's not paying for uniforms.
Hell
right?
no.
Mom's not bringing orange slices to practice.
Yeah.
This is big-time college football.
Yeah.
And maybe and I could be wrong about this, maybe not everybody in Provo cares about big-time college football, but I'm telling you right now, if BYU loses this game, I think you have to start looking at Kalani very critically. And I think you do not allow him. Listen, if Tom Homo had to fire Ty Detmer as offensive coordinator, you can fire Ilaisia Tuiaki. I get it. We're buds. We're bros. I understand
Everyone's
it.
best friends.
It's about winning football games. BYU's not here just to show up and compete.
Sorry, folks. That's what it is.
Okay, I don't know why I feel better now. I feel like,
well, dude, you feel better because this conversation has to be had. Like I think we have. I feel like a couple times a month we have the conversation around like, hey, BYU's too nice. Like the culture at BYU is great. Like make no mistake about it, they do have great culture. I love the messaging. Like I love obviously everything they do with video in the media department. But when we get right down to winning football games and handling your business so that we can enjoy the media and we can enjoy all these other things that you do at your school, they're too nice about winning and losing football games. Like everything you just said, I agree with. It's not about being friends. It's about winning. And by the way, I do think that people are kind of avoiding this whole Big 12 thing. Hey, is it beyond everybody that you're heading into the Big 12, a conference that's way better than the schedule you're playing right now? Like week in and week out, you're getting Baylor level teams. Like I hope everyone's on the same page with that. So this drop 8 stuff isn't going to work. And that's why I say like it just shouldn't be so hard to be like, yeah, hey, like you get one more week, Tuiaki, to show me what you can do and bring out an actual game plan and a scheme. Because that's my single biggest issue. I feel like there's not a game plan and a scheme. I feel like it's, all right, we're just going to play this way. We're going to drop 8 constantly because that's what we do. There isn't like, oh, it's 3rd and 5, and this guy is in the backfield. We're playing this kind of defense. That's what I don't like. I don't feel like they're prepared. I don't feel like they're ready.
Yeah, we'll see. Steve Smith gives us a $10 tip to ask, what are our thoughts on the CBS report about the Big 12 might have a TV deal done in a few weeks? Well, we can just stop at might have a TV deal done in a few weeks. We talked about this yesterday, like might be, could be, reports are. Frankly, until it's done and until we know the details of it, the speculating about it, because now everybody's talking about how it's a $20 million deal. Nobody in their right mind is signing a $20 million deal with ESPN right now.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Like, it's ridiculous. It is to speculate on things. And, you know, like I've talked to people about this deal. Nobody seems to believe that it's actually done. So I'm not going to speculate and throw out wild, things like it. There's just no point to it. There's no point to it. I don't care. Like John Canzano, who, frankly smokes George Kliavkoff's cigar for a living, can go and muse about whatever it is he wants to and spread lies and misinformation about the Pac-12. Like, I really don't care. Anybody that thinks half of the Big 12 is leaving the Big 12 to go to the Pac-12, I just don't see how that's possible. And I don't see how it's possible that, like you look at all these, if they're all rumors,
it's just rumor mill. It's rumor mill and speculationville. And that's why, that's why you notice, you can put some dots together with this stuff as far, generally in the big picture. Like, we've had great conversations about, the Big Ten and ESPN getting the SEC rights. And, so those things you can kind of have good conversations about. But to speculate about, the Big 12 and what's happening, I just think it's too early. Like, when the report says, hey, it could be done in a few weeks, okay, great, we'll see you in a couple weeks. I just don't think it's, smart to speculate about it.
Right, and I don't understand why there's such an appetite to, to just straight make things up. That's the hard part. And I like Dennis Dodd a lot. He could be absolutely right. He could be absolutely right. I don't know if he's absolutely right. But what we've seen is that, what we know is that when you go back and listen to, the Wilner Canzano podcast where they absolutely filleted George Kliavkoff during that interview.
Yeah.
It was garbage. It was a complete waste of time, that interview. It wasn't an interview. It was a hit piece. It was a PR job. You can't trust the information that's coming out in the media now. It's really unfortunate because I really like John Wilner. I respect his work. It's disappointing that was allowed to go on, that there were no critical questions or follow-ups on that podcast. I can't listen to them ever again.
Well, and I think what makes it worse is that, in the following 2 weeks or so, since that's come out, it's become very clear that George Kliavkoff is not being honest, is not being truthful about, I know it's always tongue-in-cheek on the show now about the back-of-the-envelope calculations thing, but it's just the best example of what the Pac-12 and George Kliavkoff is doing.
George Kliavkoff said, and I think we may still have it.
I think we still have it. Yeah.
George Kliavkoff said of UCLA that, he did some back-of-the-envelope calculations. And it's like, are we really doing back-of-the-envelope calculations?
Yeah.
When we're talking about people's, lives and livelihoods. And unfortunately, I don't think we have it anymore. But it's just it's so ridiculous. The commissioner of the Pac-12 talking about the livelihoods and the well-being of student athletes that it's his job to protect.
Right.
Made up lies and you've done no forensic accounting.
Whatever.
And you did back-of-the-envelope calculations, his words, not mine.
Yeah.
George Kliavkoff told the Stooges in, the Pac-12 that he did back-of-the-envelope calculations. The Pac-12's an embarrassment.
Yeah.
He is desperate to save UCLA. He is desperate to do whatever he can do to save a dying conference. And guys like Canzano and Wilner gave him a platform to come on and absolutely orally pleasure Pac-12 presidents. That's because that's all he did.
Yeah.
That's all he did is he had no facts. He had no hard numbers, nothing at all. He had none of that. Just back of the envelope calculations.
Yeah, and you know what he did have? He did have this whole angle about how UCLA and USC are not going to be able to offset their costs by going to the Big Ten, even though what happens when UCLA football is good? Who knew, right? Who knew? UCLA football is 6-0 or whatever the hell they are now, right? Oh, people are going to show up when they win football games? Imagine that, right?
The wild swings and guesses about what these contracts are going to be per year per school is when you see people like, oh, it's only $20 million. Stop.
You're casual.
Stop. Yeah. Yes. The Big 12 is going to cut its current per school revenue by 50% so that they can. What are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So anyway, I appreciate the tip, Steve Smith, but yeah, thanks for derailing the show. I guess that is what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Utah Jazz NBA talk coming up. We have to talk about Russell Westbrook at 6:30. I don't even know what that was. I have no idea what that was. Mike Chase, first in this morning, says, morning, fellas. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Hopefully BYU can turn it around. Yeah, hopefully they better. Top of the morning, fellas, Kenai says, BYU loses a game. Should they just focus on next season? I mean, I don't know what you do if you're BYU. You're a 7-point favorite on the road at Liberty.
Yeah.
If you lose this game, it's a catastrophe. I think if you lose this game, and I'm not even trying to be fire the coach guy. If you lose this game, you got to start looking at Kalani Sitake very critically.
Yeah.
If you lose this game the way you lost the Arkansas game, I think you fire Ilaisia Tuiaki on the tarmac. You Lane Kiffin that guy.
Damn.
You lane train that dude. You do. You have to.
Why do you think they should do it that way?
Because you have to make a statement.
Yeah.
You have to let people know this is not who BYU football is. Because the other thing that I think is a real problem, this is who BYU football is.
It is.
This is 52-35. This is we can't stop anybody. We're not using our athletes correctly. We're not putting our guys in position to succeed.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that's who BYU's becoming.
Yeah, and I think, the tough part is when I even go back to the Oregon game. I mean, I know everyone wants to talk about Notre Dame and Arkansas, but go back to the Oregon game. How disappointing was the Oregon experience for the fan base? Because that's really where all this started. I mean, if we're being honest, that's where all of this started. When you went up there to play Oregon and you got your ass
you got
kicked,
run over by
you got
run over by Bo Nix.
Yeah.
But you can almost take the Bo Nix loss, right? It wasn't the Oregon loss, it was the Bo Nix loss.
Yeah.
You can almost take the Bo Nix loss and say, okay, hey, that's a huge game. Oregon now has proven themselves to be very good. They've got UCLA and Eugene this weekend. Like, you can almost handle that loss. But when you lose to a mediocre Notre Dame team, and then you turn around and you hand Arkansas a win, and you sputter against Wyoming and Utah State, that's where it becomes a little less palatable to lose the way you lost to Notre Dame, to lose the way you lost to Arkansas, to play the way you played against Wyoming and Utah State, even though you got the wins. That's where it's like, yeah, I can't write off that Oregon loss anymore.
Yeah.
Because this is who we are. This is why we don't play good defensive football. And it's defensive football. We can, bloviate about play calling with A-Rod and, okay, cool. Offense is not the problem. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Yep.
Defense is the problem on this team.
Yep.
There's just no doubt about it. Teddy Wayman, good morning to you. Dax Johnson says, morning, what's up with all the soaking talk yesterday? Where can I find support group for it? Yeah, well, dude.
Dax, please.
Don't soak your Johnson. Teddy Wayman says, good morning, Dax. Dax says, I'm listening to the show on podcast at the job most days, and when the soaking segment came on yesterday, I got all the looks. Well, listen. Listen, man.
Hold on. So wait, are you inferring that you listened to the whole soaking segment on a loudspeaker so everyone could hear it? Is that the inference that I'm sensing here?
That's what it sounds like. Did you really listen to that on a speaker? Bro, do you not have headphones?
You're so awesome, man.
That's amazing, Dax. That's amazing. Cody Strickland says, Lakers look like trash. I would be impressed if the Jazz record was better than them. By the way, aren't you guys supposed to be at the Maverick Center? Thanks, Cody. Appreciate that. Thank you. Jesse Harsh says, Kalani should have learned more from the Ty Detmer situation. I hope the Tuiaki situation helps him more. Love the guy. I mean, everybody loves Kalani. It's not a personal thing. He's a good human being. But when you're...
business is business, man.
But yeah, this whole Tuiaki relationship thing has become a problem. Let's be honest. It is an issue when you're not willing to lessen the impact of your defensive coordinator because he's your best friend. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. And I think when you look at, and the issue is that the defense and the position has been bad. The defensive line has been a real issue for this team. And that's a Tuiaki thing. And the defense has been bad. That is entirely a Tuiaki thing. And you haven't been willing to do anything about it.
Well, and I have to be honest, it's really interesting to me anyway that we have this dynamic, specifically with the defense, where the first half they'll get run out of the building, and then in the second half, they're fine. Like, they hold their own, like, everything's cool, we're good. And it begs the question, at least for me anyway, of how much play calling Kalani has actually done. Like, I mean, I have to imagine on some level Kalani's done some play calling, and I'm just curious, like, because it kind of feels like to me for Kalani anyway that the whole play calling thing is something that he's kind of had to keep under the rug because he doesn't want it to blow up into this thing.
He's had to keep it under the rug.
Yeah, like he's had to hide it because he doesn't want it to blow up.
Well,
in the
he certainly
face.
has gone out of his way not to say that he's calling plays.
Yeah, and so like it's that's what fuels the whole, hey, you and Tuiaki are super close and you care more about being best friends than playing good defense narrative, because I don't think that's entirely true. I do think there's some truth to it, but I think there's politics at play. There isn't any setting. And so that's why, I don't know. That's why I say Kalani's got to put this to bed. That's where he will run into issues. If you allow this to continue and you don't put it to bed, then you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, I don't know what you do with Ilaisia Tuiaki. My guess is that you either demote him or I can't see him just out and out firing him.
Why do you think that though? Because I feel like we're approaching that very quickly.
Well, I mean, I think you should have fired him after last year. I mean, this is not new. It's only gotten worse because, I mean, you're getting exposed by the caliber of talent you're going up against. It's no surprise that you are beating Wyoming and Utah State and you're losing to Notre Dame and Arkansas. That's not surprising to anybody. So we'll see. A couple more, then we got to get to the Jazz. Roy Wall says his staff is a mess. The defensive side of the ball has to be overhauled. I think we all agree with that. Go Black 45 says, I think the 2 years, he gets 2 years in the Big 12 to build up the roster to adjust to it. But after that, with no improvement, he's gone. I think that's absolutely, that's probably true.
Yeah.
Probably true. Dax says, I will say I'm generally an optimistic guy about BYU and the way they play, but holy damn it to hell, the last few weeks have been so frustrating. They got recruit better on D when they get into the Big 12. Well, I mean, it would be nice if they would pick up their recruiting, but the talent's not the problem.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in the schematic dysfunction of this team. Like the X's and O's on defense are the problem. You have plenty of talent. You have enough talent to cover in the secondary, yet you're constantly in dime.
Yeah.
You're constantly in zone. You're dropping 8. Like it just doesn't make any sense. You're not blitzing. You're not exotic. You don't do the things that you need to do. You're asking Tyler Batty to drop into coverage. What sense does that make?
Yeah.
What sense does that make? It makes no sense.
And then you're going to sit here and try and sell us something about how, hey, teams move very fast, so that doesn't allow us to do anything exotic on defense.
Yeah, I don't know. It is, yeah, we'll see. Hi. Neville93 says, would BYU be effective if they keep losing? No. Yeah. I don't know what you do if you, they won't keep losing. Boyd Lake says, NIL has changed how we look at D1 football. Less grace and patience from the fans than before, but let's also be really honest. BYU fans can be miserable.
Yeah.
BYU fans, it's why you can't go on Cougar Board.
Yeah.
Twitter is a disaster. Like, it is a...
Keep it real.
Yesterday we were talking to a booster who was like, yeah, it's a cesspool. Like, BYU fans can just be terrible.
Yeah.
And
misery loves company, right?
They do.
And
there's a lot of company and a lot of misery. And it's unfortunate. There's a ton of BYU fans, and most of them are miserable right now.
Yeah, and I think it's just I think that the program needs direction. And what I mean by that is one way or the other, right? You got to put, it's almost like a running back. You got to put your foot in the ground here. You got to decide, okay, Tuiaki is going to, coordinate the rest of this season, and then we'll decide what to do. Or we're going to move on from him now. Like, you have to, you're at this fork in the road. I really feel like this for Kalani. You're at this fork in the road where you have to decide, which way do we want to go here? And just go in that direction, because then at least, even if you are losing, you have direction and people can follow that. Right now, I feel like you're just in this gray area where you're floating, and that's why you would lose a locker room if you have.
Yeah, MY Monty fan says all fans at any fan base can be terrible. Truth. That's because people are people, and some people just suck. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Eric and Raleigh says Cougar Board.
Yeah.
Cougar Board is not a female adult dating site. It is I don't even know what you would call it. It's a fan community.
It's a place where you go to complain about football.
Yeah.
Essentially.
It's just fans ripping.
It's BYU's
football.
Reddit, essentially.
I would agree. There's a good thing. I haven't been there in quite a while, so I don't know exactly how you would describe the latest state of Cougar Board, but,
But generally speaking.
Boyd Lake says the talent level at BYU is enough to do a lot better than they are. That's what fans are seeing, at least those who know what to look for.
Right.
Well, there you go. There you go. All right, we'll come back. Connor Tulin says, are you guys starting at 8 now? No, Connor,
bro, what do you do?
6.
Bro.
We start at... You must be not in our time zone. We start at 6 Mountain, 8 Eastern. We've been doing... that's been for a long time now.
Yeah.
So there you have it. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and get you into the NBA. Talk a little bit of Utah Jazz basketball. Our Jazz Talk is presented by our good friends at TryDayTrading.com. TryDayTrading.com/Monty. All I'm asking you to do is go there, Register for the free webinar and make a decision. It's free. It's no obligation. You want to change your life? You want to get off the hamster wheel of looking for that side hustle that'll, bring prosperity? Stop looking and start doing. TryDayTrading.com is your solution. Jazz and Timber Puppies tonight.
I'm sorry, did you say Timber Puppies?
I did, in fact, say Timber. I hate the Timberwolves.
Okay.
I just do. I think I've always hated the Timberwolves, and it goes back to Soda and Kevin Garnett. And
Soda.
Anything is possible as long as I'm a Celtic, not a Timber Puppy.
Right.
All of that. Rudy Gobert and the Minnesota Timberwolves prepare to host the not normal Utah Jazz,
right?
Who are supposed to be tanking. Remember, they're trying to lose every game, and
right, they have a direction.
Yeah, and then they opened the season and didn't lose very well. They beat the Denver Nuggets the other night. They are a healthy 8.5-point dog tonight in Minneapolis. Can the Jazz continue to play this way, the way that they played on opening night?
I mean, I think they're going to keep playing that same style of basketball, but the difference is going to be that teams are not going to miss all those opportunities the Nuggets missed. That's the thing. Like, you still turned it over a ton of times. You still, did what bad teams do, and I think that the Nuggets just didn't make you pay. And furthermore, I think that, when you look at teams like the Timberwolves, they are a team that can out-athlete you, with Anthony Edwards, and you've got D'Lo, and you've got, obviously Cat, and obviously Rudy. Like, you've got a robust starting five there, and I think that this is a game, that I said they wouldn't win on opening night, and I look like an idiot now, but I just can't believe you'd go on the road and beat this T-Wolves team. I don't see any way that's possible. So, yeah, I think that the Jazz and Will Hardy are going to keep playing that same style, the up-tempo, moving the basketball, looking for opportunities, but you can't tell me that this good of a team is going to lose to the Jazz. I just don't see that.
I would have to agree with that. I think it certainly was not a fluke, and I want to be careful saying, oh, well, what happened on opening night was a fluke. It was not a fluke. They played really good basketball. They played Tenacious D. That's a music group, too.
Are we clear on that?
Anyway, they played Tenacious D. I thought they shot the ball better than advertised. They got great contributions from guys like Rudy Gay, Malik Beasley, Walker Kessler with a double-double.
How about that?
Look, I think they played really good basketball. Can they flip that script on the road and do the same thing? We'll see. But there's no reason to believe that this team is a 20-win team anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at a team like, Minnesota, who is expected to do big things in the West this year and compete for a conference championship, this is a real measuring stick. And obviously, you would expect the Timberwolves to win this game, or at least that I would. But you would also expect a high level of compete from this Utah Jazz team, Jake, and I think that's what you really need to see tonight.
Yeah, and I think that's the identity of this team. Having, been able to sort of digest the Nuggets game a little bit and, just think about it. Like, that's the identity of the team. Obviously every NBA team goes through shooting highs and shooting lows, but this team is going to work hard. This team is going to always be tenacious on the defensive end, and I think that will afford them a lot of extra opportunities that teams before them never would have seen because they're not playing that level of defense. They're not, or at least they're not putting that level of effort into defense. So that's why I say, like, I will maintain the core fundamentals and the pillars of this Will Hardy-led team are always going to be up-tempo
core fundamentals and pillars of this team.
Yeah, dude. Like, we're going to play fast.
In our country, we fly the stars and bars and the American Eagle and
stuff.
God bless America.
Right.
That was very, political vote for Jakey.
Yeah,
The pillars and tenets of our presidency.
Yeah.
You have to say now, though, that you are impressed with Will Hardy, right?
Yeah, I think tonight's game is another opportunity, though, for him to impress because, okay, so it's like you did that at home. What does the road look like? Because, again, this is a good team you're playing. Again, you're not – this is, obviously they have, championship aspirations here. So it'll be interesting to see, okay, when the Timberwolves go on a 15-0 run or a 10-0 run, what is the bounce back like of this team? Those are the things that I'm looking for. I don't really care if Colin Sexton scores 25 a night or 10 a night. I want to see what the culture's like, because that's ultimately what you're trying to do here with tearing a team down and building a team back. Like, isn't that what you're leaning on? Isn't that what you're falling back on?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Like,
and I mean, you look at what this team's been through the last 6 months with trades and getting run out of the playoffs, and Rudy's gone, and Don's gone, and your mom's gone. Like, you don't know this team anymore. So
yeah,
they're establishing themselves as professionals, as a group of professionals. So I would expect a high level of compete. I mean, all I care about is ball movement, defense, want to, and growth.
Yeah,
Because I also think Walker Kessler versus Rudy Gobert is a pretty interesting matchup.
That's going to be interesting.
I mean, Rudy's out for blood, but Walker Kessler can play a little bit. He doesn't have to bang down low to do it. So we'll see if the Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, I dare I say Terrence Mann situations repeat themselves. I mean, we'll see how the Jazz handle Rudy Gobert. I mean, it's going to be very interesting, but I also want to see more rotation. I want to see Jordan Clarkson pass the ball, frankly.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's one of the big things that stood out to me about this team is that, the one handicap is going to be when hero ball shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And all Jordan Clarkson has done for the last 3 years on this team is play hero ball.
Yeah.
Is he going to pass the ball and become a team player? I don't know. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that, Jordan Clarkson can be your all-star. He's definitely capable of that. But I agree that there needs to be, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that Jordan Clarkson's not bought into the system. I think he's bought into the system, but I think the issue is because of all the hero ball, naturally when he's out there, his instinct is to go and score the basketball. That's what he's been told and directed to do for so long, that situationally speaking, that's what he does. So it's easy to say, hey, we need you to move the ball more, but that's something that Jordan's going to have to work on. Like, you're going to have to work on not just trying to go 1-on-4 in the paint, getting stuck in the paint because you picked up your dribble, and then trying to pass out, because that's where the turnovers come from. So,
I agree.
That's the struggle.
All right, before we get your comments, I want to play this Donovan Mitchell sound, because this is fascinating. So Donovan Mitchell went on the Old Man in the Three podcast with JJ Redick, and he talked a lot about the COVID situation. For those of you who don't remember, the Jazz were kind of the epicenter of COVID in the NBA.
Right.
Rudy Gobert is believed to be the first player to test positive, even though he probably was not. But back in those days of COVID, we had no idea, right?
The coronavirus.
So listen here as Donovan Mitchell talks about how the Jazz handled that night in Oklahoma City.
We were in the locker room for 9 hours after the game.
I'm sorry, what?
We were in the locker room for 9 because, first of all, the Oklahoma didn't want us to go anywhere.
Right, they didn't want y'all back at a hotel.
They didn't want us to
people
go
weren't wearing masks. This is like when they're telling you to wash your hands.
Right, to wash your hands, to happy birthday or whatever, whatever it is. So we're in the locker room for 9 hours. We get tested, and this was the original test, the one that is all the way up here, touching
up on the skull.
It was a lot, and it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was panic in the locker room. It was just like, what can we do? We're just here, and CP. Thank God, shout out to CP. Sent 15 bottles of wine that night. So we had food, and then we won.
That's the first I'm hearing of this.
Yeah, we got drunk. I'm not gonna lie to you. We got drunk because we're just like, all right. So there's definitely no game. We're not playing for a while. And they're in a moment where you can't. Everybody's calling. We're on FaceTime with everybody. Anybody you could think of is calling everybody in this locker room. And we're sitting there like we just don't know what's going to happen. We're trying to drink to not be scared. You know what I mean? In one of those moments, you just help us.
First of all, Chris Paul giving them 15 bottles of wine to get them drunk was amazing. That's why Chris Paul's a beast. But what do? You're stranded in Oklahoma City, of all places.
Yeah.
You can't be in your hotel.
Yeah.
Nobody will give you a private jet. I agree. You get drunk.
Yeah.
You get drunk not to get scared. And I just think it's crazy insight to what actually happened.
Yeah, dude.
And by the way, if you don't listen and subscribe to JJ Redick's podcast, you're dumb.
Yeah.
Because it's phenomenal. But I think the real interesting thing here is that there's some contrition from Donovan Mitchell about the fact that this is not Rudy Gobert's fault. Listen to this bite right here where Don talks about how mad he was in the moment at Rudy Gobert.
When you tested positive, were you scared shitless? or did you kind of feel like, all right, I'm gonna be all right because I'm young?
I was angry. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, it can't. The report. I would say, out of all the media reports that have ever come out about me, Rudy, and the team, that was probably the most accurate. I was mad. I thought at the time, because we didn't know. I thought because Rudy was around doing whatever, that was the reason I got him. Now we don't know. Like, I could have given it to him without contact. Like, whatever it was, we don't know now looking back at it. But at the time, I was like, all right, like, Mom, sis, because we had just left New York. We had the East Coast trips. We did New York, Boston, and somewhere else. And then we came home for a game, and then we went to OKC. So we had just had that trip. So once I found out I had it, I called my mom and sister, like, look, we got to find a way to get you guys, because they're in Connecticut. So Connecticut rules are different than Utah rules. I fly right home. So I don't go back to Utah. I fly right to Connecticut to be with my mom and my sister. And just sitting there. I didn't get any symptoms. I'm sitting there panicking. They shut down the Adidas headquarters because I saw people from Adidas. They shut down the school that I went to because the varsity basketball team came to the game. They shut down the Encore in Boston because I went to the casino to play roulette for like 5 minutes. They shut down a lot of places just because I was around. And that's when I felt like the world was just watching me and Rudy.
Dude.
The coronavirus.
Crazy. That is crazy. And again, it's JJ Redick's podcast, The Old Man and the Three. I mean, it's fantastic. You should go and subscribe to it. I listen to it every week. It's really good. But Donovan Mitchell talking about the fact that he shut down Adidas, his old high school, the Encore Casino in Boston. Like, I mean, that's where we were as a country, and now you understand what they went through.
Yeah.
I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely fascinating that we had no idea about any of that. He never comes back to Salt Lake City. He just goes home to Connecticut, which is what all the players did. And you know what, man? It was terrifying to hear Don talk about that. The thing that's so crazy is I remember being scared of the virus. I remember that. I think we all were scared of the virus.
Yeah.
I remember that parking lots were empty. Streets were empty. Like, nobody was out. Nobody was going to work. Like, nothing. It was crazy times. Like, and to hear that guys like Don really struggled, that's so relatable because I think we all went through that.
Yeah, and I think when you look back as a Jazz fan, and you just think about all the conversations and all the little nuances, if you follow the team closely, between Don and Rudy, and like just the dysfunction of that
incredible
group. Like, that's what stood out to me about Don's comments. Like we knew what we knew before he went on JJ Redick's podcast. Like, we knew there was some dysfunction and Rudy was a locker room problem. We knew that. But then you combine that knowledge with what Don just explained, like, it's crazy. Like, there's literally, and again, you should go and listen to it, but there's a part where Don talks about the fact that when they were finally able to leave the arena, their bus driver was in a full hazmat suit moving them. Like, it was like, that's what you're talking about.
They get on the bus to go back to the hotel from the arena. They had been in the locker room for 9 hours. They are drunk on Chris Paul's wine. CP3, Chris Paul gave them 15 bottles of wine. They're drinking in the locker room. They get on the bus, and the bro driving the bus is in a head-to-toe hazmat suit.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? You're drunk on wine, and now you're in a bus driven by a guy in a hazmat suit. I cannot even imagine.
The visuals.
What is in your mind? You're wine drunk.
You're like, all right, well, if I die today, I die.
If I
I'm
die,
having
I
a nice
die.
time.
I'm ready for paradise, right? Like, I mean, it's amazing to me. It is absolutely amazing to me. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get back to NBA talk coming up here in just a few minutes, but we got to get to football at 50.